Thank you for joining the Resilient Cyber Show. My name is Chris Hughes, and today I'm joined by Kamal Shah. Kamal, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Chris. It's truly an honor.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into things with you. I've known of you and the team and obviously been collaborating with you for a while now, but you guys have a new report out, which we're going to be diving deep into. But for folks that don't know you, don't know Profit Security, can you tell us a bit about yourself and the team?
Yeah, so I'm Kamal Shah. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Profit Security. And what we have built, Chris, is Profit AI. You can think of this as a set of AI agents that automate the manual, tedious, repetitive tasks of triaging, investigating, and remediating alerts. So as far as my background, this is my fourth startup. The past three startups were acquired by Symantec, McAfee, and Red Hat, respectively. So, been very fortunate. But I love building companies. I love achieving product market fit. And part of the reason we co-founded Profit Security is because this was the number one pain point that we used to hear from our customers, which is too many alerts, too many false positives. Help me solve this problem. And with agentic AI, we are truly seeing this become a reality.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I want to ask before we dive into the report, which is going to touch on, I've been digging into the report and there's some great information in there about alerts, fatigue, burnout, all the problems we hear about in the SOC. But, you're an investor, you're in it, you've been through this space, you've built companies, you've exited, you've sold companies, you're watching the AI rise. There's a lot of excitement around AI and cybersecurity more broadly, AI for security, not just securing AI. And it deals with AppSec, it deals with GRC, and of course, SecOps and the SOC. And I feel like among those categories, like I'm excited about all of them, but the industry in terms of investment, startups, the excitement, it seems like the SOC and SecOps use case is the one that has the most like palpable excitement around it. Would you agree there? And why do you think that is among the categories in our industry?
Yeah, I do agree. And, I think there's several factors that come into play that drive the excitement that the investment community has in investing in companies. And so obviously they're great teams, which is first and foremost. But when you look at the size of the opportunity, a size of the market, this is where I think SecOps dwarfs other categories that you mentioned, which is around GRC or AppSec. Right, so you know this better than me, Chris. But companies today, are spending a lot of dollars in buying a lot of security tools, right? And what do all these tools do? They generate alerts, and then those alerts are routed to security operations, and then they have to triage, investigate, and respond to those alerts. Figure out which ones are false positives, which ones are true positives, and which ones are malicious and benign. And so it's really the size of the opportunity. If you look at Gartner, for example, Gartner says that companies today are spending $86 billion, that's with the capital B, on managed security services. And most of that is around security operations, right? And so the market size or the opportunity is massive, the pain is massive. It is a top three problem or priority for CISOs, and that's really what's driving the excitement in this market.
Yeah, actually, you said something there, before I dive into the report and bring the, some of the findings up in the conversation here, you said something that makes me want to ask you another question as a founder, multiple time founder who's exited, succeeded, et cetera. Companies, of course, are organizations, enterprises are using managed services because they don't have the internal expertise or the bandwidth. They don't want to hire headcount, you name it, all these kind of things. They lack the expertise and want to deal with a third party who specializes in that. I'm curious, when you look at the solution that you all have built in the space more broadly, do you see it being used by just enterprises directly? Or I can see an angle where, even managed services providers are starting to use these kind of solutions downstream with their customers. What do you think about in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, you're spot on that enterprises today, even if they want to hire security operations team members, right, they can't find folks who are trained and have the expertise to do that. And so they rely on managed security services. And there's a strong partnership opportunity for us too, right? So we sell to enterprises, we also sell to managed security service providers, and I think that's exactly right. And I think the overall the way we think about this is not about role elimination, Chris, right? This is about role elevation. by automating this manual tedious task, we can just take our entire industry and the security analysts and security operations team members and elevate their job away from this manual, tedious, repetitive tasks and focus on security priorities and tasks that truly matter, right? That are going to reduce the overall risk posture for the organization and improve security. So that's kind of the opportunity that we are seeing, which is it's not about role elimination, it's about role elevation.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I feel like, this is a polarizing topic to some, I guess. And like, people are like, oh, it's going to automate jobs away and it's, whatever. But when you look at the industry, often organizations don't have enough expertise. The teams are struggling. They don't have enough bandwidth. I don't think we're going to see a reality, at least anytime soon, where we just outright are eliminating teams. We're trying to make people be able to have the time and space to focus on risks that matter to the organization. This is kind of how you guys open the report too. You start off, we'll dive into this now. Some of the metrics you guys open up with is it discusses how the average organization sees 960 alerts daily. This felt really similar to me in terms of vulnerability management or AppSec, where teams are drowning in vulnerabilities, or in this case alerts and data, but they don't really know what matters and they don't know what to focus on. What was your kind of takeaway from the report on that front?
No, absolutely. I think there are a lot of parallels with the wealth management space. And what's interesting is that the problem in security operations is even more challenging, right? Because in the case of vulnerability management, you're dealing with AppSec, and so it's a it can be broad, obviously there, but it's still AppSec. The domain is application security. In the case of security operations, Chris, we have team members that are trying to figure out identity alerts and endpoint alerts and email phishing and data loss prevention and cloud and network. So it's a wide domain, and that's what adds to additional complexity in dealing with these alerts.
Yeah, something else I found interesting in there is you said the average organization has, I think it's 21 tools that are generating alerts. And that seems as me like kind of a snapshot of the broader security tool sprawl problem that we're starting to be familiar with, where organizations, especially large enterprises, have hundreds of security tools, and you have 21 tools that are generating alerts and notifications. And the report goes on, to discuss, like, as I said, teams don't have the bandwidth or capacity. It says 40% of alerts are never investigated. 60% of teams report that ignored alerts, lead to essentially subsequent critical issues or incidents, and sometimes even involving customer data. And that's a pretty damning statistic when I read that. From your perspective, building in this space, with profit, how does AI help address that challenge?
Yeah, I mean, I think we see this just about every day with our customers, right? So imagine you have a scenario where you get a low severity alert from an identity provider, and you get a low severity alert from your endpoint provider, and you have a low severity alert from your network provider, right? And if your approach as an organization is, hey, I'm going to ignore low severity alerts, then you're going to ignore those. But when you correlate these three alerts, right? And AI is really, really good at that, then you may realize that, hey, a low plus a low plus a low is actually a high severity alert that should be looked at immediately. And that is the advantage and the promise of AI, right? So you no longer have to ignore those low and medium severity alerts, and the speed at which AI can do correlation across your different security tools is unparalleled. And you imagine a security analyst with a swivel chair logging into multiple tools, trying to figure out what's going on, cut and paste data into Excel, develop a timeline, and say, oh, this is a problem. And that's assuming they're not ignoring, low and medium severity alerts, right? And so it's really the AI is really a perfect fit for solving these age-old, decade-old problem that we've been struggling with in security.
Yeah, a little bit of a shameless plug is you're spot on. I wrote a book called Effective Vulnerability Management, and my co-author of the book is Nikki Robinson, who is multiple time doctorate and including in vulnerability management. And she wrote a lot about attack chaining or vulnerability chaining, where as you said, low, low, low is no longer a low, right? And we often hear attackers thinking graphs, not lists, and they think about moving from one opportunity to the next in that context of low severity alerts, which we may ignore, but could ultimately lead to an impact to the organization. information. And I think that we're still seeing what AI can do in many domains, but we know it's great with this type of work that you're talking about here of correlating data, putting comprehensive investigations and reporting together, and tracking complexity across environments that's just tough for humans to do in cloud and on-prem and hybrid and identity. And like, it's a lot to try to keep track of. And I think that's where AI and LLMs have a lot of potential. The report also highlights how 57% of companies are suppressing their detection rules. And the way you all framed this in the report is like, disabling alerts, disabling notifications, not using certain features or tools that you have. And when I read that, I think of one hand, it's kind of a parallel risk. On one hand, you might be missing something that matters from a risk or a cybersecurity perspective. But on the other, like, you're diminishing the value of the tools that you have by literally disabling features and functionality because you don't have the bandwidth to field all the alerts that get generated. How do you see AI making an impact on this front?
Exactly. I think it's all about, flipping the equation around, right? So today what happens is you have fixed capacity in security operations and you say, okay, how many alerts can I truly triage and investigate? And let's go manage to that. And the way you should be thinking about it is, hey, what are what are all the signals we should be looking at, right? And making sure that we think about it from a risk perspective. Now, every company has a different appetite for risk. And for some organizations, it may make sense to ignore or mute those alerts because the risk may not be as great. But AI solves that problem, right? It takes that trade-off away, because with AI, you can now look at every single alert and investigate it thoroughly in a matter of seconds or a couple of minutes, right, at a very low cost. And so you no longer have to make those trade-offs. And so then it becomes all about, hey, what are the more detection rules that I can write, right, to make sure that my detection aperture is wide, not narrow, because I no longer have to worry about missing anything because I have AI that's going to go look at those alerts and escalate the ones that truly matter. So I think that's really fundamentally the way we think about it. And the other dynamic that's happening, Chris, that well, is that the number of alerts are also increasing, right? So our adversaries are leveraging AI. And so the volume of alerts is increasing. Companies are no longer able to hire more headcount in security operations. So the only way to fight AI is with AI, right? So that's the other promise. And I'll give you an anecdote of one of our customers. On average, our mean time to investigate an alert is 4 minutes across, 1 million plus investigations that we have done across our customer base. And in one case, there was a security issue, and Prophet AI escalated that in 55 seconds. And the human process through a MSP, it took them 10 hours and 5 minutes to escalate that same issue, right? And so I'm not faulting the MSP, right? When you have a staffing problem and if you have some a spike in alert volume, there's only so much you can do. But it speaks to the promise of AI. And that's why I think that we are seeing the adoption that we're seeing in the marketplace. And one final point on this is, I don't know if you remember the latest CrowdStrike report, which they issued during Black Hat, but the breakout time has shrunk from 62 minutes or so in 2023 to now 48 minutes. Right? So attackers are also getting faster and faster in terms of taking advantage when there is a something they can exploit. And so if you're relying on a human process that takes hours to find something or to respond to an alert, when the breakout time is 48 minutes, you're already losing, right? It's like taking a knife to a gunfight. It does not work. And that's really the other factor that enterprises should keep in mind as to think about how they can leverage AI in security operations.
Yeah, for a few things I want to say there. First off, you talked about the suppression of findings. As I was, kind of writing my thoughts about this report that I'm still working on, y'all have this out here soon, is it talked about, the key areas of gaps that the organizations have. And the top two were cloud and identity, right? And the reason that I thought that those were two very egregious gaps to have, OWASP released their top 10, last week, a new top 10. Security misconfigurations jumped from number 5 to number 2, and it's being driven by cloud infrastructure misconfigurations. So if you have a gap there from a detection or response capability perspective, you're missing one of the leading application risks in the industry right there. And it's secret leakage, cloud misconfigurations, infrastructure vulnerabilities or weaknesses, those kind of things. And identity is always, year over year the leading attack vector in DBIR and other reports that we all lean on. So you basically have a gap in the most two critical areas that our industry leading reports and resources are saying you need to be watching, and you have a gap there, right? And to your point, it's not. I don't think it is faulting the teams to say, it took an MSP 10 hours or whomever, how many minutes or hours. It's just, as we said, it's a capacity constraint. It's a real world, capacity constraint, and that's why I think we should be looking to wield this technology to be more effective, in terms of cybersecurity, just like our development peers are doing it to be more productive, and as attackers are doing it to be more effective in their activities too. And this is where I saw something in the report that really jumped out to me. In the report, it talked about AI for security is a top 3 priority for security leaders, and 55% of companies are using AI for alert triage and investigation. To me, that kind of implied that this is a relatively new technology, or at least application of the technology, right? It kind of inferred to me that cybersecurity is kind of moving on from being a laggard or a late adopter, and we're all kind of coming to the same conclusion, like we need to be looking to use this technology too. Is that your takeaway, or what were your thoughts there from how we adopt this?
Yeah, this is my 4th startup in cybersecurity, and I have never seen the companies that are typically early majority or late majority, i.e. late adopters of technology, embrace AI in security operations. I mean, the list of companies that we are doing POVs with or even have customers are not the companies that have traditionally been early adopters of technology, right? And I think it speaks to the size of the problem. It speaks to the dissatisfaction with the way they're solving the problem today, and it speaks to just the overall willingness from companies across all spectrums, to try and adopt AI. And I think this is also one of the domains, like with customer service or like with coding agents, that is very, very easy to demonstrate value in a POV. And I'll give you an anecdote with one of our customers. They've been a customer now for 6 months, and when we're doing a POV with them, they had the junior and the senior most analysts as part of the team that was evaluating products, and the readout call at the end of the POV, the CISO asked them, "Hey, what do you think?" And the response was, "Hey, we'll be sad, we'll be miserable if you take Profit AI away from us." Because they can't, once they see what it can do, they don't want to go back to doing it manually. Right? I mean, it's imagine if you were in accounting and you were keeping your books on paper, and then Excel comes about and goes, "Oh my goodness, why would I use paper?" Right? It's so much efficient to automate this task so I can go and do other things that truly move the needle for us.
Yeah, I think that speaks to an aspect of this that's really important. Is the embracing and the adoption by the community themselves, right? Is it's we hear about burnout, fatigue, all these things with the practitioners and analysts in the SOC. This is making their life easier, and like they are wanting to use these tools, which is really cool because it's kind of like a community led adoption, that we're seeing on open up in front of us. I wanted to ask you too. You talked about this a little bit earlier. You talked about open the aperture for alerts and detections and things like that. One topic I've seen come up on this quite a bit, and I'm curious your perspective as someone that's building in this space and working, POVs, working with customers, is the economics of it. The economics of alert investigation and things like that compared to, say, human, labor, right? That has a cost associated with you. There's kind of an economic aspect of this. What's your thoughts on, the affordability and practicality of, it from an economic perspective as we open that aperture and tackle all the, detections that we have now, as well as expand it to be even more? What's the financial, kind of implications of that?
Yeah, it is super compelling, Chris, when you look at the ROI. We've had customers that have looked at it, and just without getting into the specifics, it is a no-brainer if you have security operations teams in the US, and it's a no-brainer even if you have security operations teams in India or in some other country where compared to the US the cost structure is low. But so the ROI on the cost side is super compelling. But more than that, Chris, what we are seeing is that yes, that is a factor for sure. And it's an order of magnitude, right? You can deliver a 3 to 5x ROI in your first year. But what's even more compelling is the impact on risk and reducing risk. and on team morale and on improving the overall posture for the organization, security posture for the organization, and in team growth, right? And so now you have your level 1 analysts who are performing level 2, level 3 work, and your level 2 analysts who are now doing threat hunting capabilities and accelerating their careers by leveraging tools like Profit AI, right? So I think that is the other impact that we should also consider when you think about what AI can do. And we are finally making a dent on the 5 million open positions that we have in security, right? Because you can't hire people, and now you're solving this problem or addressing this challenge with AI.
Yeah, I mean, that's what jumped out to me about the report is we know we can't hire our way out of this problem. And it's like, telling people that are using manual methodologies, it's like telling them just run faster. And it's like, we can't, like we're running as fast as we possibly can. Like we need better tools. And I think that the way you framed that is a much more comprehensive way of looking at this too. There's the cost of, the alert investigations and such using AI, and there's the cost of the labor, of course, but there's all the real implied, cost of ignoring the suppressed findings. What is the risk to the enterprise? What is the risk to the organization? How much more broader can we expand our detections to really identify more potential malicious activities and things going on in the environment and things of that nature? And I want to ask you too, this is obviously it's a very competitive space. There's other startups in this space. You're a 4-time founder. I'm sure you're a very competitive individual, doing this 4 times now. What do you think helps differentiate you and the team, in this space, against others who are looking to tackle the same problem, using a similar approach with this new AI-driven kind of approach to SOC? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of noise in the industry for sure, and there are some legitimate products. I think there is I'll tell you the good and the bad. The good is, hey, look, competition's always good, and I think it helps everyone elevate their game. And what we tell our customers is that look, AI demos really well, but the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So we encourage you to do a POV and put it to the paces, right? And that's really where the products kind of differentiate. So I'll give you another real world example of a Fortune 500 customer of ours, where they sent us and another player, another vendor in the space, 12,000 alerts. And they said, hey, go investigate these alerts because we want to do it at scale. And we're going to compare the results with internal disposition of those alerts. And Profit AI was 98.5% accurate. And it was a no-brainer decision for them. And the other vendor, I'm not going to mention it, was at 80%, right? So accuracy matters. And so when we think about it and we work with our customers, we say, hey, the way you should think about evaluating these tools is first do a POV, and then focus it on 3 dimensions. There is coverage, i.e., do you cover the breadth of alerts that we get? This depth of the investigation, right? Are you performing best-in-class investigations? Has your product been trained to act like an expert, security analyst who does a thorough job of developing the investigation plan for every alert we have? So that depth matters, and then depth leads to accuracy. Because if you ask all the right questions, then your investigation results or outcome will be more accurate, right? And by the way, this is not as simple as asking ChatGPT, hey, how do I investigate this alert? Because ChatGPT has not been trained on how to conduct best-in-class investigations, right? And that's what we have invested in over the past 2 years, and that's what matters. So that's one piece. The other piece of it also, Chris, is that customers are saying, hey, look, providing an AI SOC analyst is great, but I have other challenges in security operations. So we announced our threat hunting capabilities, and customers now love that because now we're accelerating how quickly you can conduct threat hunts in your environment, and there is more to follow. So it's evolving from an AI SOC analyst to a AI SOC platform that has multiple capabilities that addresses the use cases for our security operations teams. But I think this is such a massive market, Chris. There will be multiple winners in the space, and what I'm most excited about, more than winning or losing, is making a dent in a problem that has plagued the industry for the past decade.
Yeah, it's a systemic challenge that we all know. And as I said, you can't hire your way out of this. We know we're not going to, people simply can't just do better, do more. Like we've been trying that. And we have a technology now that we can bring to bear, I think, to address some of these systemic challenges. And I wanted to ask you, you've kind of touched on some of this throughout the conversation, some real world insights that you're going through with POVs and customers and things of that nature. I'm curious, maybe both from the technical perspective as well from the product go to market, that kind of thing. As a 4-time founder, like how are you using some of the insights, both from going through his POVs, doing, as you said, you're kind of speaking to the data moat that is the investigation maturity that you just laid out there that you guys do. How are you using some of these insights to go back to your team, and whether it's technical, whether it's go to market, and kind of enhance your capabilities even further?
Yeah, no, we made a significant investment in making sure that we are, emulating the product is being trained on, how to conduct best-in-class investigations, and that's a combination of working with the customers, our internal teams, and working with, other world-class, incident responders, as uh, advisors and what have you, and then also thinking deeply about workflow, right? So one of the things that customers like about a product is that we are not trying to be the seventh single pane of glass, right? And so if you are using, I'll pick an example, a SOAR tool or your SIM or ServiceNow SecOps as your single pane of glass for security operations, we can easily integrate with that via bi-directional integration. And so just keeping workflow in mind and making that a first principle uh, uh, guideline for product development becomes super important. And the other piece of it is also really pushing the boundaries on transparency and explainability, right? How do we make sure we show everything that AI is doing? Because AI cannot be a black box, right? In particular in security operations, we are building trust with our customers, one investigation at a time, right? And so being able to show them exactly why something is a true positive or false positive or malicious or benign is extremely important.
Yeah, I
And
agree with
then
you
having
there.
them,
Go ahead.
yeah, and one more thing, because it also, and having the mechanism for customers to provide input as well, right? So this whole notion of how do you make sure that Profit AI can easily adapt to a customer's environment, right? Because every customer has different policies, right, around when it comes to security, and making it easy for them to provide that feedback and then adapting it. And making sure that the feedback is specific to that customer only, right? Because you want to make sure you're not sharing sensitive information like companies' internal policies with all your customers. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a few of the things you just laid out there really highlight, the fact that you've been through this before and have learned these lessons and this wisdom firsthand. Like not setting out to build yet another single pane of glass. Having that level of transparency with the customers, understanding that you're going to have to integrate, interoperate with other tools and things in the tech stack and the environment. These are all things that I think some people don't always get and don't always approach the problem from that perspective, and to their own detriment often, to be honest with you. So we've kind of run the gamut of, the report, the alert fatigue, the opportunity for AI, the market perspective as well. Anything you want to say as we head out here that people can keep an eye out from you and the Profit team? I know you guys have had a hell of a year so far already. Anything else you want to touch on?
No, look, if you are interested in learning more, please check us out. We'd love to show you a product demo. We'd love to show you real world customer case studies. I mean, to date, across all our customers, Chris, we've conducted over 1 million investigations. We've delivered 360,000 hours of cost savings to SOC teams. Our average mean time to investigate is 4 minutes. We have a 98.5% accuracy rate on investigations. So, I would argue that it's probably, across all customers, we probably conducted more investigations than any other vendor in the space, and that just speaks to the product gets getting better as we get more and more investigations under our belt, and it would be we would welcome any folks wanting to see a product demo and learn more.
Awesome. Well, you heard it there, profitsecurity.ai. Give it a look. Also, check out their state of AI and SecOps report. Some really awesome insights there. Everything around systemic challenges, the opportunity for AI. I've been enjoying the report. I'm going to have a deep dive coming out soon on my takeaways from it. And thanks so much for coming on, Kamal, and joining us and taking some time to chat.
Thank you so much, Chris. Truly an honor and a privilege.
Absolutely. Take care.